This is WIPULP, Pembroke Pines, Hollywood, Fort Lauderdale, The Rock Church.
Estás escuchando Radio La Roca 106.3 FM. Radio La Roca.
Here we are Wednesday morning. Welcome to the Ryan Crossley Show. We are here one more time to talk about what's going on in our world, and there is a lot going on. So we want to just welcome every single one of you, every listener. We ask you to share this program to your friends and family on your social media, everywhere that you can. We're just trying to be a voice in the middle of everything that's going on. Sometimes you feel so powerless against it all, but the Bible does say that life and death is in the power of the tongue. So our voices are much more powerful than we think they are. So I welcome you once again to the Ryan Crossley Show. Thank you for being here. Obviously, we could talk about a lot of things today, but there is one thing that is on everybody's mind starting yesterday and early this morning as we find out more and more the details of this tragedy in Texas. And I feel like there's a lot to unwrap. I really feel like there's a lot to unwrap about this, and it's difficult to do because there are so many different feelings that rise up. So just hang with us. We'll be here for the next 50 minutes or so talking about this and trying to bring some perspective and maybe a little bit of, a little bit of healing. But thank you once again for being connected to the Ryan Crossley Show. Before I get into it, I am excited to tell you there are a lot of good things that have happened for us for the radio this last week. We were able to participate in Expolit 2022 and over 79 interviews that were done, a lot of connections made. And we're hoping that next year will be even bigger and better for our radio station. I am forever thankful to Brother Matias Mesa and Sister Carolina. They are phenomenal in what they do, and they really are the force behind the growth of the radio. We're so thankful for that. And we have something very exciting coming up in June. In June, we are going to be part of Faith and Freedom in Nashville, Tennessee, and we're going to be on Radio Row there, which is exciting. They've actually approved us a space for Radio La Roca to be, and to be able to interview the people that are going to be there. Great men and women that are fighting for the morals and the values of our country. So we went last year. I think it was in Orlando, and we were able to participate there and kind of get to know what it was all about. And this year, we are even more plugged in because we're actually going to be able to have our own booth and hopefully do some interviews and give some presence to the radio station. That's pretty cool. I'm excited about that. And I want to just say, I don't know if she's listening or not, but I am so thankful for Nilsa Alvarez, because she has been just amazing for us, a connection that was a godsend, and she connected us to this a couple years ago, and I know that God places people in your life to be able to accomplish great things, great connections, power connections, and I just want to thank Nilsa. If she's listening, we are very, very appreciative for everything that you've done and everything that you do. And if you haven't checked her out, you need to check out her social media. She is on top of things. She is a voice in our time, and not just a voice. She actually gets things done. She knows how to get it moving, and was very, very instrumental down here in Miami area during the elections. And so we're just very, very thankful to her. So please follow us, because we will be, if I'm not mistaken, we're actually getting free internet connection also. So we might be able to do live from Faith and Freedom. We'll be able to stream live the radio program and the interviews. So I wouldn't miss that if I was you. And that's starting in the month of June. I'll give you the dates so that you can be just aware of it. But it's going to be June 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th. Those are the dates that we will be there. And I'm excited, very, very excited about it. So thank God he's opening up doors for Radio La Roca. And also, one last thing I do want to mention is coming very, very soon, we will have our radio app. Now, that is absolutely exciting. We're going to have our own radio app to where we will be worldwide without any connection problems anywhere. We're very thankful we have an FM radio. This is not just an internet radio that you're listening to. We are licensed by the FCC as an FM radio station, 106.3 FM right here in Broward County, and reaches probably over about 1 million people as far as the area that it covers. Don't know exactly how many listen, but I can hear all the way up to Commercial Boulevard when I'm going home on the turnpike, and then sometimes it cuts out right about when I get to Commercial. But it goes all the way to A1A. If you live down here, you know what I'm talking about. All the way up to Commercial, all the way over to A1A, all the way down to Hollywood Boulevard. And I've heard it out on I-75 sometimes. So we've got a pretty decent range as far as our FM wave goes, and hopefully in the future we'll even be able to make that more powerful. But getting in the app is a game changer, because everybody's always on their phones, and when you get in your car, your phone automatically connects. You'll be able to listen to Radio La Roca at any time, anywhere, without any interruptions, and we're very, very excited about that. So please stay tuned and focused, because that is coming out soon. Okay, with all of that said, I wanted to say some things that were good news, because what we have to talk about today is not good news. It is an absolute tragedy, and I think it's very important. I'm going to be very careful today, but it's very important to unwrap this, because so many things start happening when these tragedies occur. I'm not giving anybody any news that they wouldn't know. Yesterday, a 18-year-old gunman went into a elementary school in Uvalde, Texas, and started shooting. And the total death count right now is 19 children and 2 teachers. I think 2 police officers were also shot, and they're recovering. They're going to be okay, it seems like. But 19 children dead and 2 teachers also killed. The suspect is also dead. From what I understand, he was eliminated by a Border Patrol agent. And so that's what we know so far. Obviously, when we talk about these kind of news items, there's new things that come out constantly. So we will find out more as the days progress as to the motivations, how exactly it happened, how long he was there, how the response, what time was by the officers or those that were responding to the incident. So, I mean, there's no point for me to get into those kind of things, because there's no way for me to know anything that you wouldn't know just by reading, in this case, anything that's coming across the news channels. But I will say this: I was reading, and it's so hard to swallow this kind of stuff. It's so hard to deal with, especially because I read this morning about one of the victims was Uzziah Garcia, and he was confirmed dead in the school shooting by his grandfather, and he happens to be 8 years old. And the reason that just shook me is because my youngest child is an 8-year-old little boy who is full of life and energy. And to look at the face of Uzziah, I'm looking at his picture right now as I'm talking to you, it's just, there's no way to be able to explain the feelings that come across you in this moment, because you could see your own little boy. This morning I was listening to one of the fathers of the Parkland shooting down here in Florida. I was actually a police chaplain at the time that the Parkland shooting happened. And even though I was not able to go in and respond because of the very, very high security that was there after that, some of my fellow chaplains at the time were able to respond a little bit quicker, and they were able to take part in some of the, very minimally actually, but in some of the grief counseling and that kind of stuff. It was very hard to do because immediately federal officers get involved, and things get pretty tight, understandably so. But so this morning I was listening to Mr. Pollock, I believe is his last name. His daughter's name was Meadow, and she was one of the victims in the Parkland shooting down here, which hits as close to home as it can. I literally live probably 10 to 15 minutes from where the Parkland High School is, and I actually drove there, and I stood there and watched at that time Rick Scott. I think he was the governor at the time, Governor Rick Scott. I watched him give a press conference there, and was able to go past the line and to a certain degree and be there. Felt like there was very little that I could do, but I was there. But the point is, I was listening to Mr. Pollock this morning, and they were interviewing him, or just asking him to comment on what this caused for him. And he talked about, he said, because they were asking him, what can we tell these parents that can help them in this time of need? What can we tell them that will comfort them or help take the pain away? And Mr. Pollock was so, I appreciate his honesty and his frankness. He said there's nothing. He said you will never get over this. It never goes away. And it's something that stays with you. You don't. It's like a dull pain that is always there. And he basically was saying there's not anything that you can say or do that will take any of that feeling away. It's a tragedy that has happened. And now for him, he said the thing that has helped him is to be involved and to try and make a difference. That's what he feels like his daughter would want him to do. But when these things happen, there is really nothing that we can say that will take any of that pain away. That would kind of minimize something that cannot be minimized, which is the loss of a child, tragically, not unexpectedly, just and in a violent way. So it's so hard to unwrap all of this because it keeps occurring. Now, one of the things that Mr. Pollock said, and this is that's why I've said that I need to be very careful today, but I also want to be very honest. One of the things that he said is the same thing that I have felt like. He said, we do not learn from these things. He wished that we would learn from past shootings and take action. Now, one of the things that you're going to start hearing over and over and over again right now, immediately, which is what happens after any one of these shootings, is gun control. Well, the problem is guns. We need to take away all the guns. We need to pass gun control reform. Now, I will say this. I'm going to read something because I'm actually in agreement with him as I talk about this. But I was reading something that Bill Clinton said, and I agree with it. Let me find it here. Bill Clinton said this. He said, "My heart breaks for the families who sent their children and loved ones off to school today at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, whose lives will now never be the same." Then he said, "We owe these families and the families who have experienced similar losses, including as recently as last week in Buffalo, action." I don't know if you know, but just recently in Buffalo, 10 people were killed in a mass shooting. So in less than 11 days, we've had 2 mass shootings. And then this is what Bill Clinton said. He said, "Enough is enough. The American people overwhelmingly agree. Our elected leaders at the local, state, and federal levels, regardless of party, must find common sense ways to keep our children and communities safe." I like what he said there. Common sense ways to keep our children and communities safe. Because and I'm using President Bill Clinton's statement here. This is what he said. Common sense ways to keep our children and communities safe. And I'm going to talk about that here in a little bit, which is also something that I heard Mr. Pollack say this morning. And it's something that I have always felt like we need to do in these cases. It's what we should have learned from these cases. But then this is what he said, because right now the left is going to immediately say that the problems are guns. And I want to talk a little bit about that. I'm trying to be sensitive to what has happened, but I feel like the solutions are not difficult, but I think that politics get in the way of the solution. But the solutions are pretty straightforward, in my opinion. But this is what Bill Clinton said. He followed, after he said, find common sense ways to keep our children and communities safe, he said this. He said, they can do so without touching the right to hunt, sport, shoot, and keep guns for self-defense. So I do like what Bill Clinton is saying there. He's not anti-gun. He's not saying, hey, let's take all the guns away. He said there's things that could be done without touching the rights that a person has to own a firearm for hunting, for sport shooting, and even for self-defense. He said propaganda and paranoia have kept us from helping each other on this for too long. We can do and be better. So I agree with that statement. And Bill Clinton is not a Republican. He's not a conservative. But I agree with his statement. Now, let me just say something, because I think sometimes people are unaware of the reality. Let me just say this. We already, as far as gun laws are concerned, we already have common sense gun laws. The problem is criminals do not care about gun laws. Now, interestingly enough, I don't know if you remember or not, but during all of the protests during that one summer of all the riots in Minneapolis, Seattle, all of these places, people were brandishing guns openly. I remember my wife and I and our kids, we had a vacation planned to Stone Mountain, Georgia. We love Stone Mountain, Georgia. It's a great place. If you've never been to Stone Mountain, Georgia, you need to go. It's amazing. Stone Mountain is the largest rock in the United States of America. One big rock. Well, into the side of Stone Mountain, there is a carving. It is a very famous, very beautiful carving, and it is, I do believe, I remember, I know Robert E. Lee is one of the men that is carved in there. I think Stonewall Jackson, and I do not remember for the life of me the third one, but there's 3 men. They're on horseback. It's carved into the side of the mountain, Stone Mountain, Georgia. It is beautiful. One of the greatest laser light shows you'll ever see. It is a piece of American history that should be preserved. And I think that it serves for us to remember things that we should remember. Why? To not repeat them. But I remember we were getting ready to go Stone Mountain, Georgia, and it was very tense. The atmosphere was tense in our country because all of the George Floyd riots that had occurred, and all of the things rising up about race and all of that. And so one of the targets for some people wanted to basically remove the Stone Mountain carving. They felt like it was just like they were tearing down statues all over the country, like somehow that is going to erase history. The reason we remember history is to not repeat it. For example, my wife told me, I'm sorry, I'm kind of a little all over the place, but follow me. My wife went down to the Holocaust Memorial down in Miami, and she said it made you cry. We need those kind of things. We need to be able to go to a Holocaust museum and cry. And why? Because when we don't remember those things, then we are destined to repeat them. And listen, look at what's going on in Ukraine right now. In Ukraine right now, there is crime against humanity. There is torture going on. There is war crimes happening. And so it's important for us to remember and see things that sometimes we're not too proud of, those moments in history, but they serve for us to remember them and to not repeat them. Slavery was a horrible stain on the history of the United States of America. It was a horrible thing. And when you go and I've gone to the Henry Ford Museum in Michigan, and there's an area there where you can see some of the items that were used to keep slaves, for example, from running away. There was this neck thing that they would, it was like a shackle that they would put on their neck with some really long pieces of metal coming out of them. And the reason that they would do that is so that they couldn't run away through the forest, because they'd get caught up that's horrible. It is absolutely horrendous. But I will tell you something, when you see that, me as a human being, when I see that, I'm glad I see it. And the reason I'm glad I see it is because it makes it very real, and you remember that, and you say, we don't ever want to repeat that. These people that want to erase all of those kind of things are not doing you any favors. It hurts. It's not nice. It's not fun. Those statues are there not in a way of heroifying everything, but they're there for remembrance. And so anyway, Stone Mountain is one of those places that has a monument, and it is a Civil War monument, and it is some generals of the South, including Robert E. Lee. Well, you know what? A few days before we went to Stone Mountain, 200 men from a certain organization, I'm not going to name it because I don't want anybody to misinterpret me, went in brandishing, they were fully armed, 200 men armed with all of their AR-15s and everything, and with all these guns, and they walked through, they just walked through Stone Mountain, Georgia, through the park. Now, honestly, they walked through, they didn't do anything, but it was a way of intimidating and basically saying, we're armed and we're here. It was their way of protesting, whatever you want to call it, but 200 men did this. and brandished weapons openly, okay? Brandished their weapons openly. During the riots, the Black Lives Matter riots, all of that, people were brandishing weapons openly. So what I want to say with all of that is, in those times, I didn't hear them crying out gun control. We need gun control. They didn't do that. I mean, there was people literally hunting down police officers and killing them. It was dangerous to be a police officer today. But when those things happen, they don't cry gun control. Okay, it's always race, it's oppression, it's who knows whatever other thing. So what I want to say with all of that is, you're going to hear gun control. We got to get control of the guns. We got to get all the guns. Well, let me just tell you, as an American who has purchased a gun before, we have already common sense gun laws. We do. Every time that I have purchased a weapon, I don't have a concealed carry permit, although I would like to get that. But every time I've purchased a gun, I have to fill out an entire questionnaire. I have to give them all of my information, social security number, everything. They do a complete background check on me. And if I don't pass the background check, I can't buy the gun. Not only that, because I don't have a concealed carry permit, I can't even take the gun with me that day outside the store. I have to wait 5 business days, which normally, because of the weekend, turns into an entire week. I have to wait 5 business days before I can come back and pick up the gun that I purchased. I know this because I have lived it. So I am a responsible gun owner. I own my guns for the 3 reasons that Bill Clinton said: to hunt, to sport shoot, and for self-defense. That's why I have them. And so I'm a law, please listen to me, I'm a law-abiding citizen. And the laws that are in place are already common sense laws. That if people do things legally, there is a background check. There is a way to find out if somebody has a problem. Now, people that are going to commit crimes are not going to do things legally. I'll give you a perfect example. It is the most obvious example that exists, and it's right in our face every single day. For example, drugs. Selling drugs is illegal. Cocaine, fentanyl, heroin, anyone you want to. The only one that's been legalized in several states is marijuana. But drugs are illegal. You're not supposed to be able to buy drugs. There are laws in place. And yet the United States of America is the most drug-infested and the most drug-using country in the entire world. What am I saying? You can have 1,000,000 laws against drugs, but if somebody wants to get drugs, they're going to get them. They're going to find out who the dealer is, and everything, every single part of it is illegal. There are laws against it passed by Congress, but it does not matter. If somebody wants to do something illegally, if somebody wants to commit a crime, the laws are not going to stop them. Okay? I don't know if you're understanding what I'm getting at. You can pass 1,000,000 laws about guns, But a person that wants to get a gun to go kill people, they're going to be able to get a gun, just like people get drugs. I think we have common sense laws. I know because I've lived through them. I'll give you a perfect example. My son, he's not of an age. You have to be 21 years old to be able to buy your own gun, okay? So, for example, this 18-year-old, the gun he used was not even his gun, because as an 18-year-old, he's not allowed to buy a gun. So, that's going to take me to where the real problem actually lies. But for example, my son, he's not 21 years old, so he cannot purchase a gun. I know because we asked. We were at Bass Pro, and we asked, said, sorry, sir, he is not eligible to buy a gun until he's 21. Okay, no problem. So he can't do it. He can't. An 18-year-old cannot go in, a 16-year-old cannot go in and buy a gun. Where do they get that gun from? Well, they get it from family or a friend or on the street or illegal, because they're not allowed to own a gun. So it doesn't matter how many laws you pass for that 18-year-old. The 18-year-old can't get a gun right now anyhow. So how did he get his hands on a gun? Not in a legal manner. So it doesn't matter how many laws you pass. If he wants to get his hands on a gun, he can get his hands on a gun. Now, time is flying. It's 9:40. So let me tell you where I think the breakdown is. And this is several things. Number one, you cannot continually promote violence and then not reap what you have sowed. And I don't have the video clips, but you can go watch them. There are, dozens, if not hundreds of video clips of politicians, and I'm not even going to choose sides, inciting people to violence. Get in their face. Go, let's just use a very quick, immediate example. They were inciting people to go protest in front of the justices, the Supreme Court justices. So you cannot incite people to protest and violence and then complain when you've created a culture of violence. And that's what has happened in the United States of America. A culture of violence has been created. And I'm not going to blame one party. I'm talking in general. We see it all the time. I saw it very evident in the riots. We see it in these protests. It gets violent. Why? Because the very politicians themselves incite that. They push that. And let me just tell you something, as somebody who grew up in a foreign country, that is a tactic. It is a tactic. Let's get the people violent towards one another and create the chaos. So you cannot continually incite people to violence by promoting it and pushing it and then expect there to be no violence or no tragedy like this. For example, the defund the police, the attacks on the police. Go talk to some police officers and find out what their lives are like now compared to 10 years ago. Who's caused that? Who's caused the incite to violence against police officers? Ask yourself that question. Who's caused that? Where does that rhetoric come from? And so we can't create a culture of violence and then say the problem is guns. No, the problem is not guns. Guns don't kill people. People kill people. I can have a gun laying on this table and won't hurt anybody. But if I decide that I want to do something with it, and we've learned you don't need a gun. We've had people crashing through marketplaces, killing people with their vehicles. Anything can be used as a weapon if somebody's crazy enough, if somebody's lost their mind enough, I'll tell you exactly where the breakdown is. We have removed God and we have attacked family. The breakdown is that we no longer want God's ways in our lives. We don't want God's word. We don't want prayer. We don't want God in schools. We are living in the day where we call evil good and good evil. We're living in the day where we anything that's moral, anything that's good, anything that's Judeo-Christian values, which this country was founded on and served us well for many years, we've removed all of that. In schools, instead of talking about God and family values and things that are good and healthy and promote good families, good relationships, no. What are we doing? We want to teach them CRT. We want to teach them about gender pronouns. We want to teach them about trans this, trans that. We want to try and fill their minds with garbage. And then we wonder why we're having problems. The culture has been created, folks. That's the problem. They can shout as much as they want how shocked and upset they are, but the culture has been created. When you remove God and when you attack the family structure, you know where the problem lies is family. If I'm not mistaken, I read something this morning. This boy killed his own grandmother, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't want to, I'm very careful because the details are coming out and you never know how true they are. So I qualify that by saying, this is what I heard. But the problem is family. I'll use a personal example again. I own guns. I've bought them legally through the common sense process that exists. I use them for hunting. I use them for sport shooting. And Mr. Clinton, I agree with you. I have them for self-defense. You know what? I have boys in my home. But those boys, they are taught family values. They are taught godly principles. I have taught them, how to respect the weapon, how to understand what this does. And you know what? They have no inkling or desire to do any damage to anybody with those guns. Why? Because of family, because of God and family, because they have a daddy. You know what's missing in these kids' lives? Daddies. There's no daddies. Because daddies make a difference. Please listen to me. I got 4 boys and daddies make a difference. 1 in 3, 1 of every 3 children in the United States right now is being raised without a father in the home. And then we wonder why these things happen. I guarantee you, if this boy, I guarantee you, I can imagine, if this boy would have had a good home, a good daddy, a good mama. I know it doesn't control everything. Sometimes people just, I don't know, the devil gets a hold of them or something. But the breakdown is in the family. The breakdown is in society. And it's not the weapon. We've had guns forever. We've had guns forever. But we didn't have these problems. Why? Because we removed God. We want to destroy the family to where children are being raised without the nuclear family. For example, BLM, Black Lives Matter, in their manifesto of their foundation, they are directly against the nuclear family. They want to destroy the nuclear family, which is mom, dad, and kids. That's evil. That's wrong. And it's very subtle. I'll tell you exactly. Look at what happened to us yesterday. Yesterday, my son, he goes to a Christian school. My son checked out a book from the Christian school library to read. And he got about 100 pages into the book. And my wife asked him, here we go, good parents. My wife asked him, how's the book? And my son said, Mom, the book's good except for there's one thing in it that I think I feel is bad. And so my wife said, well, bring me the book. So the boy brought her the book, and she said, show me what it is. And my son, 12-year-old son, good parents, opened the book and showed her this part where it was telling the story, and then it said, I don't know anything about the book, but it said she and her wife protected the wall or something like that was the sentence. She and her wife. Very subtle, right? I asked him, I said, is that the main character? No, that's not the main character. What is that the main story about? No, that's not the main story. But they planting the seed, she and her wife. Why? Why can't you just write a story normal? But you know why my son has good values and good principles? Because we're parents that are on top of it. But the problem that we have in America is not the guns, folks. It's not the problem. It's the breakdown of the family. It's the attack against the church. When you see politicians attack Christianity and attack the church, that's evil. I'm going to be straight up. That is evil. It's evil because godly principles are good principles. Family principles are good principles. We as people are not perfect, but God is perfect. So godly principles are what we need. Now, you know what surprises me about this? And I only have 9 more minutes. So, you know what's amazing? Let me tell you something this will show you exactly where we are. So don't believe all this garbage that they say. I'm mad that 19 children and 2 teachers have died. It infuriates me. But it makes me mad because I know it was not the guns. It was the person that went in there and killed them. And there were things that could have been done that could have prevented this. And it's not what you're going to hear right now. You're going to hear take the guns away. That's not what it is. It's reinstituting godly principles, family values, the things that are so evil now. If you say that, you're nuts. I'll give you a perfect example. I have been censored live on social media. We were doing a broadcast. Listen to me now. We were doing a broadcast live of this show, and I was using a video that I didn't know when I was using it. I learned. But proprietarily, it belonged to another company. I'll tell you who it belonged to. It belonged to Disney. I didn't know it belonged to them. So the video clip, which was all over YouTube, I was using that video clip to just make some comments, interact with it. They shut down our program right during the program, cut it off, and cut the broadcast, right? Live. Which means immediately. I mean, like that. I have been censored on social media. I have been flagged for mentioning words like vaccine or COVID-19 or whatever. I mean, immediate flag. Do you realize that this guy, this 18-year-old, that went and killed all of these kids and teacher, there was all kinds of signs of it on his social media, pictures, messages. You know what blows my mind is that these social media people, these fact checkers, are so quick to censor, turn off anything that they don't agree with, and somehow they don't catch this. They don't catch the fact that this guy is not right in his mind. It's something to think about, right? They're quick to respond to a conservative voice. They're quick to censor you, cut off your broadcast. But very clearly, from what I've read, this boy had some social media presence that was troubling, but nothing, no phone calls were made, nothing was ever done. Where does the problem really lie then? Is it the weapon or is it society? The other thing, and I finish with this because I only have 5 minutes. There are so many things that could be done. I grew up in Argentina, South America, in an American school. I went to an American school down there. You know what? You could not just walk into the school. You couldn't. There was gates, locked. And if you came up, there was a guard there. And you had to show proof that you could come in, either by a student ID or you had to prove that you had a meeting with somebody. You couldn't just walk in. You couldn't. There was protection. My kids go to a school. You can't just walk in. You can't. The doors are locked. There's a at their school, there's actually an officer that's there. They have these student resource officers, right? So they have these resource officers on the school campus, but they're not allowed to be armed. They're not allowed to be armed. You want something that makes sense to me? If you're going to have a student resource officer, if he's armed, you got a good chance of having a quick response to a bad problem. If we train our teachers, if we make sure that the schools are not easily accessible, how on earth can somebody just walk in broad daylight into a school without there being some kind of security check? Especially, those are the lessons that need to be learned. Those are the things that need to change. So we can talk about gun. That's why I agreed with, and I hope I'm catching what he meant. He said common sense ways to keep our children and communities safe. You know what? Do you lock your doors at night? You do, don't you? You lock your doors at night in your house. Why? Because it's a barrier. It's a defense. If anybody bad wants to do something, you have at least a front line of defense. How many of you have alarms in your houses? Many of us. Why? You're smart enough to know I'm not an evil person. I'm not a bad person, but there's bad people out there. And so I need to have a barrier or a defense at least to deter the person and give me some time to be able to react. Every single school, in my opinion, every single school should not now. I mean, this has happened so many times. They should know we need to have these barriers in place. You know what's interesting? All this money, we sent $40 billion to Ukraine. Wonder what would happen if those same $40 billion were dispersed among the schools, right? For what? Let's bolster up security. Let's give them gates that you can't just get by. There's so many things that could be done. The problem, folks, and in my time, man, this has flown by. The problem is not the guns. It's tragic. It's horrible. But the problem is not the guns. The problem is society has created a culture that promotes this stuff. Okay? And then we don't solve the things where we really need to solve them. A lot of this talk about mental illness. Well, there you go, Facebook. There you go. If you saw that the kid was posting on social media, let me tell you. Okay, I'll give you a perfect example, and I'll close with this. The other day, I'm driving out in my neighborhood, and my kids were walking through the neighborhood. They had to do some kind of interview for school. As I'm driving out the neighborhood, I see this guy sitting there, and I can tell something is not right. Okay? He's got a crowbar in his hand. He's hollering out, and then all of a sudden he goes and he starts beating on, let me see here. Oh, hold on. Okay, this was what? Oh, yeah, okay. February 8th, 2022. My assistant pastor just sent me community guidelines strike. Your content was removed due to a violation of our community guidelines. That was on February 8th, 2022. Because it's your first time, your account isn't affected. This happens again, your channel will get a community guidelines strike. Won't be able to do anything like upload, post, or live stream for 1 week. This was back February 8th, 2022 on my radio show that I did. And the policy was, you know what they flagged me for? Medical misinformation. They flagged me quick. They responded quick. Thank you, Jonathan, for sending that to me. But then this kid has pictures, has all this stuff there, and nobody does anything. Let me tell you my story. I'm driving out. I see this guy. He's got a crowbar in his hand. I can tell something's not right in his mind. He would get up out of his chair, and he would go and beat the snot out of a car. There was a car in the driveway, and we would take the crowbar and hit the car. And I saw like 5 or 6 people drive by slowly, look at him, but do absolutely nothing. They did nothing. So I'm thinking in my mind, I'm like, my goodness, my kids are walking down the street. What if this guy decides to go down the street? What's going to happen? So I go to the next turnaround. I turn around, and I come back, and sure enough, there he is again. And he's you can tell he's not in his right mind. Okay, he's not fighting with anybody. But he's got a crowbar, and he's beating out of the snot out of this car. He goes over and just beats the window, beats the mirror. So you know what I did? I did what I think anybody should do. I didn't know the guy. I didn't know what was going on, but I thought, this is not good. It's not good for anybody that's around, and it's not good for him because maybe somebody could get afraid and hurt him. So it wasn't just who he could hurt, but it was also, somebody could get scared about this guy and cause him damage, and we don't know what's really going on. So you know what I did? I called the cops. I called 911. I said, hey, there's this guy here. Something's ain't right. He's got a crowbar in his hand. He's just not acting normal. And so can you please go check it out? I called my boys, and I told them, boys, right now, why don't you go back to the house? It's not safe in the neighborhood. There's somebody, I don't know what's going on with them. My boys went back to the house. So I'm a responsible parent, okay? My boys go back to the house. I had to go get something at the grocery store. I come back. By the time I got back, and the police officer had called me to let me know they'd arrived and everything. By the time I come back, there was a bunch of people there. I didn't see the man anymore, but there were several officers there. And so I pulled aside, and I got out, and I went up, and there were some folks talking there, and I found a lady, and she asked me who it was, and I said, listen, I want to let you know I'm the one that called. I said I was worried about him, and I was worried what he could do to somebody else because it was kind of scary. He didn't seem like he was in his right mind. I saw him beating the car, and I thought, somebody could get scared, harm him, or he can harm somebody else. And you know what she said to me? She said to me, yes. She said, he's been struggling. We're going to get him some help. This is good because we're going to get him some help. So obviously, the man has some kind of mental illness problem, okay? But obviously, let me tell you something. They had not done anything because my wife had seen him weeks before. Kind of strange also. They hadn't done anything about it. So you can say what you want, but it could be that we saved his life or the life of others by simply saying, hey, this person has a problem. They need some help. And they were getting him some help. And that's where the problems lie, is not in the weapons. That's not the problem. It's not in the laws. We have good laws. I know because I have to abide by them. It's in waking up and realizing we have removed God, we have removed family values. People like this are on their own, and if they have any mental problems or emotional problems and nobody is there to say anything, then what happens is something tragic like this, and we react. And there's so many things when I look at this, I say it could have so easily been prevented. What would have happened if the student resource officer was armed? What would have happened if the school was locked up in a way to where you couldn't get through without going through? I can't even go into a hospital. I cannot go into a hospital and go to a room without going by an information desk and getting a name tag to put on my chest to be able to go visit somebody. How come we can have those kind of systems in place for hospitals, but somehow our schools are wide open? So there's so much to unwrap, so much to talk about, but I just want to bring some perspective because it makes me mad. It makes me, now, I can't believe, some of the ones on the left, they're, good people on that are saying our prayers go for these families. We're praying for them. And on the left, they're saying bad words. I can't even say the word because I'm a Christian. But they're saying, blankety blank your prayers. They don't want a solution. They don't want to bring God into the picture. They don't want to bring family values into the picture. They don't want to face reality that we have laws that work, but laws don't work against criminals. Example that I gave on the drugs. Something illegal, they're going to find it. So I'm trying to bring some perspective because when we see this, it shakes us. It's so horrible. It's so sad. But let me tell you something. There's 100 things that could have been done ahead of time to prevent this, learning from all the other things that we have had to deal with. So I just as this all plays out, I just want you to be aware and know what we really need is not more laws. We need God back in America. That's what we need. We need God back in America. And the left hates that. You talk about God, you talk about Jesus, you talk about family values. There is nothing that gets under the left's skin any more than you talking about God and family. Why? Well, I believe so much of their agenda is very dark. It's so anti-Christian, anti-God. It's like somebody said the other day, I think a preacher that I know, a good friend, he said, America, they have shown, the left has shown they are not anti-religion, they are anti-Christian. And that is true. So what do we need? We need God. We need God back in America. God bless you. God bless America. Thank you for listening to the Ryan Crossley Show. Thank you for letting me try and unwrap this as much as I can with my feelings and my thoughts. And let's keep praying for our country because our country needs prayer desperately. God bless you. We'll see you next week.
This is WIPULP, Pembroke Pines, Hollywood, Fort Lauderdale, The Rock Church.
Estás escuchando Radio La Roca 106.3 FM. Radio La Roca.